Hey everyone, Ryan here from Ryan-O, and today we're doing episode 5 of Manhunt, the search and hunt for John Wilkes Booth. So, this episode is actually really good, I'll say. Sadly, we are getting near the end. There's only 2 episodes left, and spoiler alert, Booth doesn't last for one. But I'll go on. So, with this episode, we kind of start off first with Booth and Harold going across the river to Virginia. But just as historically, they either get lost, they get like separated in a way. Again, Harold said there was a fog. I believe that was correct historically. I could be wrong, but we know historically speaking that they did get turned around. They went back basically into Maryland instead of into Virginia. In the show, we see them go onto this land area, and we see a bunch of dead Confederates that were like camped out. Most of them were from Texas. They were a Texas brigade, a Texas regiment or company. And basically Harold has the idea to blend in with the Confederates, some of them going home, many of them going back north. Again, Maryland was a neutral state. They had many soldiers join civilians join the Confederate Army or the Union Army. So again, it is not that uncommon for them to be marching along back home. We see Stanton again, Detective Stanton, which, again, not historically accurate. So we see him and his little band of men and cavalry see a little company of Confederates singing Dixie. Basically, again, they were going to pledge allegiance to the Union, but I just find it kind of funny that they are still singing Dixie, even though Dixie too was a Union song. There's different types of songs, again, with different lyrics. Though Dixie is typically a Southern song, like Way Down South and Dixie. So I like that song. I like how they're singing it. So basically, again, they're interrogating these guys. Again, they kind of find out more tips and on where Booth might have headed. And kind of like, again, through this episode, we're doing a lot of jumps still, which I hate because it makes the video confusing. But again, all the the Negro slaves or former slave servants, again, Black Americans, African Americans, but again, they're calling them Negroes in the show, got land that we saw last episode. So they got free 40 acres of land, I believe it was, for them to do whatever they want on. So we saw Mary, the servant of Dr. Mudd, do a school. And she has her brother, and she has a bunch of other former slaves or other black freemen on that land. It looks like they're trying to map out a house or something, or I don't know what. But of course, Johnson, he is a Democrat. He is a former slave owner. I mean, still kind of technically is, though he lost his slaves. And we see that he is going back on what Stanton wanted and what Lincoln wanted. So now all the land given to free Negroes or former blacks are now just basically private property. They're owned by the U.S. government until deemed fit, which, again, according to Johnson and a bunch of these other white, bureaucrats, I'll just call them, makes it simpler, are for only white people to enjoy. And kind of we see just a little bit of tussle with that. They showed General Sherman in I believe it was Georgia, which again makes sense. He did do his famous March to the Sea campaign where he burnt every town, every city, every farm, everything. He burnt everything. Even many Southerners today have a weird hatred of Sherman, if you mention that. But he is basically like Lincoln. He is a firm believer of kind of like making your own way, which I like the irony because Johnson, he keeps saying that too. Oh, you got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And again, for those of you who don't know, bootstraps were basically attached either to your pants, like they were like belts. And sometimes they would attach it like a clip to your boot, but it would be all connected and you would kind of like pull them up like over your shoulders, almost like a backpack, think of it. But again, it's like suspenders, so they get stretched and pulled. So now your pants, now your pants are secured. The light almost killed me. So, but yes, but I just like that irony that, again, even Stanton called Johnson out on his BS, saying, you know what, you own slaves, you inherited slaves, you inherited all this money and wealth. What are you talking about picking yourself up by your bootstraps? So I like that. But again, in the show, we're following along, kind of, with this story. Again, a lot of it is not true to a sense, but needless to say, I still love the show. We now see Booth and Harold in a little group of former POWs, or former prisoners of war, former Confederates, just now kind of going home. Again, they're going to write on the piece of paper, pledge allegiance to the Union, and everything is going to be all well and good. Again, that's what Lincoln wanted. So basically, again, Johnson's kind of just following along. Stanton is kind of pushing that forward. That again, former Confederates, just go home. Nothing else is going to happen to you. Just kind of, if you want to take your firearm, do. If you're not, leave it. I mean, I think some of them were forced to leave it. Like you heard the one leader of the merry band of Confederates saying, "We're unarmed. We turned in our firearms. You know, we're just going home." So we see that same group. And needless to say, it looked like they picked up some more stragglers of former Confederates. Booth and Harold, again, are disguised, but they're disguised as Texians. I find that very hard to believe because, for one, I know the Texas regiments and brigades did fight in the North. I know they fought at Gettysburg. I know they fought in countless other battles. I just don't understand in the show, meaning how they're dead. Like, you see them have one tent, and it looked like there was 6 guys dead. Or maybe it was just 2, but it looked like there was a few. I mean, I would be questioning these Confederate Texians on why they're going further kind of south to Richmond, technically, and going like this weird route. And that would be my main thing. I would be like, hey, you know, you're Texas. We're going kind of north in a way towards Maryland, or some of them might be going to Virginia. But it's just really odd. And I don't like that. Again, in real life, Booth did not change clothing that we know of. Again, Booth was again, he was, well, I don't want to spoil it, but he was taken out of Garrett's farm. We find out again from one soldier. He tells him to go to Garrett's farm. So, and he was wearing basically what he was wearing during the assassination, his long black coat, which you see in the show or in photographs. It's like his most iconic look. But we see the one eye patch Confederate basically interrogating Booth because, again, now he just met with Stanton. Never happened. Stanton, again, stayed in D.C., not Detective Stanton. And he sees the initials JWB on John Wilkes Booth's hand. Again, which was common back then. Again, many soldiers in the Army of the Union and the Confederate were marked unknown. Again, if you go there to burial sites today, even Gettysburg, Antietam, Shiloh, So many. You will see so many countless headstones of thousands of headstones with just no name, unknown. It'll just say Union soldier, Confederate soldier. Again, there weren't dog tags back then. So sometimes soldiers would tattoo an initial or write it in their jacket or something like that. So it's not uncommon. So Booth did have those tattoos. He did have JWB, and even if you see in other parts of the show, he has it in his clothing. His famous boot example. So he's asking them where they got their honor. And like Booth is saying Bull Run and asking him where he got his honor. And the guy says Bull Run. But that's not what we were wearing back then. Again, Bull Run was one of the most famous first battles of the Civil War. Many Confederates just showed up wearing militia uniform. Some of them wore Union uniforms, like blue and gray. There's a long story about that where Union soldiers shot at Union soldiers, Confederates shot at Confederates, because no one knew who was who. So it's a funny story, but it's also a sad story. I can go into that later on in a future episode. But then basically he kind of knows, and like Booth says, all right, you caught me. You called me out on my lie. John Wilkes Booth, I killed Lincoln and everything. And you should see, again, how these soldiers perspected this. They, like, hated Booth for doing this. Like, again, there's no honor in shooting a man in the back. It's like, these are soldiers. They fought in line battles, line formations, or charges. Again, many Confederates, again, even though if you want to believe they were right or wrong, were some of the most bravest soldiers in the Civil War. And even Union soldiers admitted to this. Again, they had the rebel yell. They would go on countless charges and walking across miles of open land just for the chance of winning a battle. So, I mean, again, you have to have mad respect for Confederate soldiers. Union soldiers did the same. But, again, that's honor. Now, all of a sudden, they're seeing this man who is saying they're for the cause, or he's for the cause, and wants to restart the cause and be a hero. Again, Booth thought he was going to be a leader, a hero. They make the joke that he's the second president of the Confederacy, which I love. I find that funny. But now Booth is, and seeing this, Harold, I mean, you could see he's scared. I don't recall this ever happening in real life. Again, Booth and Harold were usually on their own. Again, they did meet with some Confederates who guided them through the swamp or the forest against civilians. But I like this approach. It kind of does make some sense that they would try to disguise themselves. Again, did they? Not really. But we kind of see, too, that Booth goes with them just to get across the river in the little makeshift raft or ferry. The black guy ferried them across. But again, you can still see Booth's hatred for black people. Again, he used the hard R 4 or 5 times in just a span of 2-3 minutes. Which again, he was a devout racist. Booth hated black people with a passion. Again, believed they were beneath the white man and everything. I already said in multiple episodes. But 2, we're now kind of getting near that end. And I do like the show. Again, Mud. They show Mud again. And Mary's pointing up. Stanton wasn't there. I told you before Stanton was in D.C. Mud got arrested near the beginning, maybe first few days after the assassination, because they were just checking this one main route out of D.C. into Maryland. Oh, there's Mud. And they found the boot. Immediately, they found the boot with JWB in it, and Mud got arrested. Again, this episode, Mud was even a devout, racist. He would, beat Mary for leaving. When the land got taken by the federal government, she went back. I could see why Mud's family is suing the director or Apple TV or whoever they're suing about the show, because it's slander. Again, there's still no evidence to say that Mud aided or not. But I just like how now they found the boot. That's historically accurate. Again, Booth and Harold are going to Garrett's farm. That's like last stop. But two, my last little bit before the end of the review, we see our new character, Boston Corbett, or as the show calls, Tom Corbett. Again, his wife in the show supposedly is ill or died, and he's selling her hats for cheap. And like some priest just blesses him and gives him a new name, Boston Corbett. That was before the Civil War began. Like it was like 10 years, I believe they said in the show. So Boston Corbett does enlist in the military, and he is extremely odd. A lot of soldiers do mention this in their accounts, like of things I've read about the assassination, just again introducing characters in different books. Boston Corbett is always there because he's right near the end of the chase. He enlists in the cavalry. In the show, they even mention that he's just really weird. His colonel or general, whoever it was, I believe it was a colonel, and he's sitting out in this like heavy rain, just staring straight ahead. And they're saying about the chemicals in the hat, which was somewhat true. There were some chemicals that got some soldiers sick, even in World War I and World War II. Uniforms got soldiers sick from like chemicals or dyes. So it's not uncommon for that to be true. But again, Boston Corbett was more mental, I believe. They're kind of making him out to be some religious nut job, so to speak, which was true. He was a devout religious man, believed everything had to be a sign of God, which I like in the show. Like they're saying, what is my purpose? And here comes Stanton to charge him with getting Booth. And he's basically saying, thank you, Lord. Thank you, God. It's like, I'm just like, oh, okay. This is, how they're going with it, which is true. I wouldn't be surprised if Corbett in real life did say those things. Again, he really wanted to get after Booth. But technically, I believe, and this is my personal belief, and I know a lot of historians also agree with this opinion, he did it for the money. Like, again, it was like $50,000 for Harold, I believe. I think it was $100,000 for Booth. I could be wrong, so don't attack me. I'm trying to spur it off of the moment of my head there. But again, even people that thought they had barely any minimum of information, like you saw in the show, the Black Ferryman says, hey, I took him across the river. Do I get that money? Like he thought he would get all the money too for just saying, I took them across the river. Now, again, granted, you have to understand this, that news, again, spread slowly back then. And how are they going to check and vouch for your information? They're not. Like in the show, they show the black father and the black son taking Booth and Harold in a wagon, and they're like talking about, oh, are they going to hang the traitor or are they going to shoot the traitor? And it's like, yeah, that's like kind of funny in a way, but I mean, it was true. But two, how did that little kid know about Booth? And you see a poster on a tree. I don't think by then they would have posted those, so to speak. Again, like I told you, Booth and Harold hid in a thicket for a few days, saw Union cavalry pass them every day, every night. Maybe they posted those, but I mean, you got to think it's rural Maryland, rural Virginia that they're going through. And some of these places, they never even encountered a lot of the Civil War, especially soldiers. So, but I do like this approach. Again, we're going to be near the end soon. We got 2 more episodes in this 7-part series. I appreciate you all watching. Just please leave a like, subscribe, maybe share this video to friends, family, so they can help subscribe and get my channel and everything I'm doing out there. So I really appreciate all of you, and thank you. So bye.